get-rich-quick schemes. Like you've got a bunch of people, flexing in their Lamborghinis, telling you, they're like 25 years old, telling you want to get rich by 25 or 22. I'll show you. I made $1 million. Do these trades that are profitable in crypto. So the way he first made his money was he did something where he bought Bitcoin in the U.S. and then he sold it on these Japanese service that said, you cannot move. Like when I deposit with you, you're not going to touch my money. And I said, Sam, if that's true, where's the money of all these people? Right, people in charge who are going to take the fall, you resign, and then you blame it on them later when everything goes wrong. His problem, though, is Caroline Ellison flipped on him.
So she definitely flipped on him.
She was smart. Yeah. She cooperated.
Involved in what you do.
It's a weird thing.
So when did you start your YouTube channel?
So I started it a few years ago, 2018, 2019. Some reactions, but not much. What I noticed is it resonated with people beyond the views, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Like I was just like, there was something different about the reaction to it. Like, and Vic, if you're Alameda Research and you're funneling money through a personal investor, that I think is the problem. You can watch them. These are real people, Joe. You can be just like them. And so I started watching this and I started seeing it. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so interesting.
What was the first video?
I started as sort of like an interview show, nothing about scams. I had a channel before it. The account fiat at FTX. And so what prosecutors are now arguing is he knew, of course, what it was. He deliberately obscured, and that's ultimately what he was doing. But it also looks like he was donating through some of his executives. And I mean, the whole thing was shady all the way down.
And sell off all his tokens. Would they be still solvent today or still in operation today? Would they not crash, or was this inevitable?
What that was to hide it from people who were trying to take a look at his books. But it's just, that's what I mean by black box. You never know what games these guys are playing. Like they say, oh, here's sort of like the rough estimate of our balance left. And ultimately, because they had lost billions of dollars, it left billions of dollars in credit claims, basically. They didn't have the money.
What is it's a crypto exchange, right? So
yeah,
how does that work?
So the first question is when you learn about crypto, wanted to basically influence politics by just donating. And the idea is you donate to both sides, you can never lose, right?
Yeah.
If you have might be one of the first trillionaires or whatever, like he's such a great entrepreneur, they think he's such a genius. It might have been one of the A1Z guys, or I don't really know what I was looking at the time. Then I go to college and all my friends get an MLMs, multi-level marketing, sort of just like hey, you're gonna get rich. So I was always getting invited to these get rich seminars. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like people get away with it. It's just there's too many people doing it, and you'll catch some people, but ultimately a lot of people will just basically skate by, even though by all rights they should have been all. And ultimately, one of the ways, even some of the candidates they donated to were through a third employee we didn't even know about, and they were donating through them for all these. So we were warning people, hey, this is probably insolvent, get your money out. But CZ ultimately was the big he was the most notorious and well-respected. Lack of regulation and the ability to send peer-to-peer, which means you and I can just send money to each other directly, no middleman. There's also a really huge opportunity for fraud, scams.
Initially, he thought he was going to be able to figure out a way to pull all the company's assets together and
I think
make everybody sound and repay everyone.
It's kind of okay, it's a little bit chic to be donating to Democrats. You can do that without too much, negative press. But if I'm the number 3 donor to the Republican Party, that's going to be a bad look. Lateral dollars or some asset will give you FTT tokens, which is their own invented coin, and that should have value if anything goes wrong. And people were accepting that as value. But we're just going to do a few transactions through your name. That just came out in a press release. It's the new charges. He was basically they call them straw donors, because it's if I give money to you to give pilfering FTX, the customer deposits, and was using it in Alameda Research, which was his trading firm, to try to make extra money, and he lost it.
And so this is all because it's on
God mode on Ultimate Bet, where the CEO could see everybody's hands and play on the site, seeing everybody's hands. So he just money. Like, well, how can you view this as a battle? Like, but he viewed it as like we're sparring partners. Like, and you won this round or you won the war.
Because he thinks this is going to go on forever.
I
views about what? Like you didn't start doing this. You started doing just like a normal interview show?
I was just doing a normal interview show with a few of my buddies. And he launches Alameda Research first, which is just like this trading firm, which basically the idea here is we have some ideas. We're going to raise a little bit of money and we're going to everyone loses confidence. Everyone sells their FTT tokens. No one wants to buy it. It's worth nothing.
So how did this all fall apart?
Great question. So a company, so they have to report everything. So if you're offshore, you can kind of not do any of that. You can play fast and loose. And, you know, for some people, they think that's better. They can offer, let's say, like 100x leverage. He lost it on the platform. He says the 18 million was on FTX or whatever, and he never got $1 out of it. But that was what the deal was for. And she would drink it up because she thought that would make her better. Ultimately, my dad convinced her, like, you got to get the surgery. Like, this ain't gonna fly. You have to, you know, ultimately get the surgery. Ours and I'd go because it was like my friends like said, hey, we have to get somebody. You know, you want to go? And I was like, sure, I'll go. I was like kind of fascinated. And you'd see these guys. You know, he blamed all the wrongdoing of FTX on Alameda Research. And he said, I don't control Alameda Research, even though he was the owner. He's no longer, or with just put a bunch of garlic cloves in the pot. I still remember our house like reeked. She would put 60 cloves of garlic in like in a stew. You know, they're like, hey, don't work a 9-to-5 job. Like, be free like me. And I'm like, you're here on a Sunday at like 5 p.m. How free are you really? Like, you're just kind of grifting here. And so, but you'd see him in nice cars. And so I was like, what am I looking at? And then as I'm doing my YouTube show, I'm like, I get fed a bunch. The money system has to be safe. Like, your grandma has to be able to charge back her credit card when there's a fraudster, right? Like, or this whole thing doesn't work. You can't rely on people being technically savvy in order to. I hate doctors so much, and it always seems to like end up with a sales pitch. Like, it never was like, hey, let me just give you this free thing. It was like always like there's a catch. Mm-hmm. So I didn't everything. I don't have access to the book. Like, I basically knew nothing. So anytime you'd call him out on an issue, you'd say, where's the money? He goes, well, I don't know. It's gone. It's Alameda Research. Ask Alameda. It's big mess right now, and we're waiting for regulators to figure it out. Finally, regulators have stepped on the scene, but you know, right now it's just this kind of wild, wild west. I start hearing about these tokens, and they're like, hey, selling courses, like, it's always the new grift. You always have to find, because people figure it out. Like, they go like, oh, that actually doesn't work. Like, hey, drop shipping is the son of Harvard lawyers. We just sort of can't lose. And nobody paid attention to some of the red flags that were going on until ultimately it was too late. It turns out he was don't invest. Like, that's a bad idea.
People were calling bullshit, though. Just like they were calling, there was a few people that were wary that were calling bullshit on Bernie Madoff, and there was a few
new all the crypto people were trying to control regulations to favor their individual business situation. And so CZ felt like he was being cut out in Washington. He's a shark. He knows what he's doing.
What was the conflict between the two of them that led him to do that?
The conflict was, it's a great question. The conflict was ultimately that Sam was trying to get some regulations passed, and he touched your money, obviously. That was the whole point. It's like, you deposit with us, we're not going to do anything with your money. It's your money. It's like a deposit. Like, it's almost like a bank. Like, you deposit with a bank. Your bank isn't supposed to go ahead and take your money. Kept making the videos, and ultimately they never did. But I start doing that, and after I cover get rich quick schemes for a while.
So when I see something like that go down, I'm like, how did he get Steven Spielberg? You know, how does someone like a Bernie Madoff or Sam Bankman-Fried, how does he get these people to do this?
Yeah, tokens like is the individual, you can think of currency, right? So it's like the individual. So Bitcoin is, you have Bitcoin. Then you have, it's one of the cryptocurrencies. You have Ethereum, basically screaming about, all these scammers online. And unlike my previous work, which kind of had resonated, like it had gotten really perpetuated their fraud. I can break it down. How much do you know about the FTX
Let's
situation?
break it down for people that don't know about it. So
Let's do it. So
Okay.
FTX was this crypto exchange. Hey, just make this problem go away. This is the CEO. Like, go blame it on somebody else. Go blame it on some, like, third party that got access to our website. Say it was like a glitch or something. And so that at the end, when you're like ready for this thing to go down, because I know as soon as I get on, it's going to end pretty quickly after. I said, let me ask him some real hard questions. Because all these guys are like, Sam, the person's not named in the report who is donating to Democrats. We know the one donating to Republicans was Ryan Salami. But that person eventually, what I know is everyone's always interested in pulling up the ladder after them and like building the kind of the rule book around like, hey, like if you're from this certain jurisdiction that we're a part of, you're fine. If you're not, like, and then he goes into the crypto space and he launches FTX.
He's very young, right? How old is he?
I think he is young. I'm not, maybe you can look that up, Jamie. 31. Her and I believe Gary Wang were big executives. They're cooperating. They pled guilty. They're cooperating with the feds. I mean, they did the launches FTX in 2019, and that's a crypto platform where honestly you can make a lot more money than just with a trading firm. So FTX quickly skyrockets in popularity. Will fall for something doesn't mean you're safe. Like, you have to do, I hate to say do your own research because that's such an overused, like, scammy phrase. It's actually such like a phrase like that, it's almost usable. It's inevitable. So something to understand. FTX was insolvent long before it was realized that they were insolvent. Right? So
regulators, when he was trying to impose regulations or encourage regulations, how could that have benefited him as opposed to Binance? Like, what could they have possibly done to make it easy?
It's this guy who drives a Toyota. So you go like, well, why does he need to scam me if he's driving a Toyota, right? Then it's like, which Sam Bankman-Fried did. Then it's like, okay, like you have $1, I'll let you trade with $100, and that's going to be like one reason you come to my offshore exchange. I can offer you more leverage than the guys who are like, years. Then he comes up, prep school. He's kind of like built for success, right? He goes to MIT, goes to Jane Street as this quantitative trader. Shocking thing. And I think that shows, like, if you're running a shady empire, like, who's better than a shady lawyer to try to help you cover it up, right?
How did you get in?
He cleaned up on all his own customers. Just basically taking their money. Like, oh, I know exactly when to fold. I know exactly when to bet. So he had God mode enabled, and then they found out really going to sell most of our FTT that we got from that deal, and we're going to sell it. We don't know what's going on there, and all of a sudden it starts this firestorm because people like eventually got paid out like $2 billion.
Whoa.
Yeah, some of it was in this FTT token though. So they have a bunch of FTT, right? And so it's like November was when all the
people that were standing out and saying none of this makes sense.
Right.
And who were those people?
So there were a few people. Is buying both, lying about it so that you can get all the good press of like caring about all these social issues while also not caring at all stuff. You're just having to trust these shady offshore entities that they're telling the truth. Binance says they're fine. They show proof of reserves, but what are their where's the money? I don't know. But he controls everything. And so it's like this is the tactic of these offshore companies is like you put the I'm this guy who's going to maximize good in the world, and that was his reason for working all the time. I mean, that's the justification to be hopped up on amphetamines is like maximize productivity, maximize human happiness. When you withdraw, there's nothing tying your Ethereum to your particular address to like this random external address because you send it to a different one. I mean, so it's like things are good for now. Yeah.
You don't know.
That was the problem with the FTX. Like, they had hidden all their numbers. Like, Sam had and basically like, shell games where you're hiding the money.
Yeah.
You're saying, oh, invest in this. This is going to become valuable later. But you actually own a bunch of guy who enabled God or who helped cover up God mode. And he's like, well, I don't want to comment on other, people, or it's just like.
Well, how does he skate on that? Like, how
change that money for some type of crypto token? There's a lot of different tokens out there, And
explain tokens, because I don't understand tokens. I know there's crypto and there's tokens. Like, what is the difference between the two?
Make something work. If it's going to go to the public, you have to solve all these issues. And unfortunately, we saw crypto kind of go mainstream before they had $10 million or your data's lost forever. And you're like, call the police and you go, hey, track this guy. And they're like, to what? To a Bitcoin wallet? It's really interesting because it was like a battle between FTX and one of their competitors, Binance. So the owner of Binance is, I think it's Changpeng Zhao. He goes by C.
Crypto.
Ransomware. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. 100%. Because before it was like, okay, you need to use like Western Union or sort of one of these places where you can kind of send money without too much scrutiny, where it's like you can donate through super PACs, political action committees, and you can donate as much as you want, and you don't have to be, your name has to appear nowhere. And so that's actually
chemtrails.
Let me say this. If it's too good to be true, if they're offering market returns that you want to believe in, you go, man, I want to believe this is real. Somebody found out about this God mode. And so the lawyer's like, how do we basically cover this up? Dan Friedberg's like, how do we, what do you want me to do? And he's like, hey.
And in the FTX case, how much of it was getting celebrities to endorse the platform?
It's huge. This is what I wanted to say. Like, the more I study, so this is funny, they found his League of Legends account. And during some of the calls after it was a fraud, you could hear him clicking in the background. Click, 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 click. He's playing League.
And probably overly confident.
Yeah, it's pretty clear he didn't see like the full scope of the situation, especially at first. It seemed like he thought, he was like saying FTX US was sort of, this is a fraud because, no one knew. There's a bunch of backing. So I made a video at the time being like, this crypto CEO just describes a Ponzi scheme. I mean, go start trading with it unless, obviously we have FDIC insurance, stuff like that. But like they didn't have that. They just take your money, go trade with it. And that's where the disaster started. So before, it's like if I send you $1 and then you send that dollar on, we can easily trace that back to me, right? It's like here, here. But if I send $1 to you and everyone's sending you $1, and then you're sending $1 to all, very strange. And these offshore entities were also using like U.S. branches. Like there's FTX US, which was like more regulated, but not really that regulated. It's calling that a fraud early. I have a buddy of mine. He goes by Dirty Bubble Media on Twitter. He's like one of the Anon Twitter accounts. He was calling it a fraud. But even Western Union has been they've been getting kind of pinched a little bit. Like, hey, you guys got to stop allowing all of this. But in crypto, because there's no TT. So it looks like if you just look at their assets, it looks like they're covering their liabilities. They owe customers $10 billion. Looks like they have $10 billion. But like your hands in both pockets. But publicly, he's just like, he's donating to Democrats because he says, oh, I'm like this, like, I care about all these issues.
Yeah.
But it's like even more cynical than just buying one party.
Gotten away with it?
So many of these scams are like these issues of either regulators not having time, not having the resources. There was already all this worry in the past. That summer, there had been a bunch of companies that collapsed. And people had never thought FTX. It was kind of the first time anyone thought FTX could maybe not have the money. 5 minutes or 3 minutes. So I don't want to give off the idea that like there's nothing here. But the problem is that with something like Europe or something like that is you are subject to all these regulations which require you to be a little more careful.
Oh, those are pesky.
Yeah, this is what was going on in crypto. They're called collateralized loans. But what FTX was doing was they were saying, hey, like, we'll take $1 million from you, but instead of giving you you're like, it's this magic internet money.
Magic.
How do you get some of that? How do you get some of that magic internet money? Well, you have to go somewhere to buy it. And so it's a crypto exchange is where you kind of go, you put your fiat, fine. And then FTX US went bankrupt. And he's the one who put it into bankruptcy. And then he's telling everyone, oh, no, the money's actually still there. I mean, he was constantly giving a conflicting narrative, not having sort of like, it's maybe not big enough. They're good people, a lot of the people going after these guys, but it's like trying to catch everyone who's speeding around, right? Kevin O'Leary's in. So you kind of think you're swimming safely with like other savvy investors. And that's what ultimately gets you to buy in. Bernie Madoff is very similar, is not surgery. You can just treat it naturally. Just don't worry about, hey, don't listen to the doctors. Don't listen to your general practitioner. You can just treat it with like colloidal silver.
I watched the new CEO, talk about it.
Yeah.
About him trying
that's John Ray.
Yeah. Trying to unravel it. And it's amazing.
You think you have this backstop because on the books it's worth, X dollars. Let's say it's like worth $5 a coin. But what you're not realizing is the real risk is when FTX can't pay you back, they probably can't pay anyone back. Sam goes, oh, you won like our battle. And people were like, is it a battle when you lose billions of dollars of customers? They've recently been shut down. But the idea was...
just the idea of putting your money into Tornado Cash.
Yeah, it's wild.
Is there a better...
And why is so much of your balance sheet made up of your own tokens? It's a big question. So one of the things that FTX had done, and a lot of companies were doing at the time, there's no Ethereum left. There's no Bitcoin left. You don't have the real tokens anymore. You just have your sort of nonsense FTT tokens, the tokens you invented. And he said, T's for a while. But I eventually pivoted into this crypto direction and learned all about that. But it started just from a curiosity about scammers. And I wanted somebody to say, CZ says, hey, maybe they don't have the money. I don't know, whatever. I'm just going to sell like $2 billion worth.
But he knew what he was doing.
Oh, for sure. He's a shark. Crypto keys all the time. I mean, it's kind of an interesting idea where you go, I'm going to get in before everyone else. But and it just was kind of, I was just trying to find my way. I was just trying to even before that, I had done a show where I was trying to break down these topics. I was like, yeah, Elizabeth Warren wrote a letter to them. They're being looked at much more closely. I mean, ultimately, all of these things are so opaque in the sense that abilities, it's hard to know. So people really just take you at face value, and they have to trust that other people are invested, so I guess I'll jump in too.
And that's
very treatable kind of cancer, and she's fine. But at the time I watched her as she's gets this diagnosis, gets swept up with all these hucksters who are telling her that the way to treat thyroid cancer.
I really enjoyed you catching him on Twitter Spaces. I really enjoyed that. I listened to that whole thing because before that you have this guy who's this,
You can take that money and you can send it to what's called a mixer, which is this fancy language for a way to anonymize your transaction. You put it, I'm a millionaire by the time I'm 23 years old. Just buy my course. My course is, $2,000. Pay me $2,000. I'll teach you to get rich quick. So, there were things that were coming out questions about, okay, they say they have all this money. Where on chain is it? So the blockchain, everything's publicly, you can see it.
Jamie's looking it up.
I thought I knew it off the top of my head, and now I don't want to say the wrong one. A16Z.
A16 found out how to be successful. And if you invest with me, I'll save you time. You could do it yourself, Joe. You could do it. But it's going to take you 5 years. Get with me, and I'm going to shortcut your issue is that anytime there's demand for withdrawals, you're going to encounter problems. So it was going to be inevitable anytime any store FTX said in their terms of service. So one of the really big problems was they actually weren't doing that, but nobody knew because nobody had to look at their books. It was very opaque. He'd be afraid of being indicted, or I don't really understand why he can't go, but he can't go to America. So Sam was meeting with regulators. CZ felt cut out, he was basically going to get a bad deal with the middleman because there's no one who controls Bitcoin. No one can say no to a transaction. Now it's there's nothing to stop you from sending that money, and then you put $100,000 into this little mixer, and then it sends $100,000 out later, and nobody knows where that money came from.
What is a mixer? How does it work?
It's interesting. So the most famous example is Tornado Cash. There was a lot of fear of missing out, or FOMO, in the markets at the time. Everyone thought, cryptos, you have to get in now, right? Because if you get in now, they kind of shut down. Myself and some other people were saying, we think they're insolvent, because we had taken a look at their numbers, And we said, there's no way they have the money for this. They don't have the tokens. He's like, well, you know, like, think of it like a box. And, you know, you tell a bunch of investors, you know, hey, if you put money in this box, we can get some money out.
The fact that they were all living together and fucking each other in this giant penthouse, this $40 billion penthouse, the things, it's insane. It's really, I almost wish
of was going on. Now he's still like trying to say he did nothing wrong. He maintains he's innocent. And right now, actually, the big, like, kind of scammer, or you were a grandma who just put one Bitcoin on there, or, you know, more likely the grandson, he treated all the accounts the same. So when everyone came running for the money, they just withdrew until nothing was. They have to say what they have, where they're putting their money. They're subject to more regulation about, like, how they take care of customer deposits. One of the big things with FTX was they told people, hey, you put your money with us, we're not going to touch it, we're not going to move it. That's what FTX never understood, how Bernie Madoff got people. Because it seems so preposterous. And then I fell for something very similar. And what I noticed with all of these things, the thread is, it wasn't like he was some random fly-by-night guy. He was well respected in the Wall Street space. People thought he might take over the SEC after, like, the current person had stepped down. They thought he was going to take it over.
Whoa.
Like, right? It's all at some address. And so people were asking, like, you say you have all this Bitcoin, where's the Bitcoin? You say you have all this Ethereum, where's the Ethereum? You know, caught. In my view, what he did was criminal. That's why I started. But it hasn't been prosecuted or anything like that. But he's on a leaked private call. Everyone can go listen to it yourself. It's just this.
It's amazing that things with this amount of money can get this far sideways before anyone knows what's going on.
This is the problem with offshore accounts and stuff. Everybody. I ask him, and he doesn't want to talk to me. So, but he's going on these Twitter spaces. So I was tracking when he'd go on a Twitter space, and I would contact the people ahead of time and said, hey, they bring on people like Tom Brady to promote it, Larry David in the Super Bowl. They kind of get buy-in from all these big sort of names, and also reputable. There's some of these people making hundreds of millions of dollars. People are miserable at the end of it, and nothing happens. And that was the start of my show.
So you start just doing interview.
That's right, but
also to the Republicans.
This is what's wild. So
yeah,
Sam knew publicly in our current American climate, like he said, well, hey, can we restructure all this money that went through me like a loan so that we can, you know, say that I took a loan out and I was donating so we didn't violate any